let's get going onto this, and we'll move. I like to talk about taxation kind of in general. It goes way back. We've always had it, and we always will, and it's always caused some troubles. Caesar and French and American revolutions, Whiskey Rebellion, on and on. If you remember George Bush in 1980, no, 1990, 91, no new taxes read my lips. Taxes cause him a lot of problems too. And I think they always will. And they're talking about the tax collectors, and they really tie for first on the list of the world's oldest professions in many people's opinions. I have a favorite quote. I keep looking for it on taxes, but I'm going to get it and I'll send it to Rick. But I had it and I've used it. It's in one of my newsletters somewhere, but it was terrific. And they're like a good husband. You can't live with them or you can't live without them. That being said, though, taxes, they're a necessity. And yet they've brought people together. They've driven people apart, gotten folks elected, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of social, political, and emotional considerations in all our taxation. This list of just a variety of taxes. My son is self-employed in Philadelphia, doing a variety of things, and most of them don't even have 1099s. It's just cash or whatever. And I think he pays at least 8 or 9 of these, being in a city. But yeah, you get the point. And I think I really mentioned that we started this revenue series in our club with this introduction, and then Dr. DeComa and the proprietary dies, and then Bill Schultz. You read him if you read American Stamp Dealer and Collector. He and Mark Schwartz, they're in our club, and they do a column each month on exhibiting. But Bill is a revenue specialist in many ways. He talked about the carte de vise, the Civil War era pictures and the stamps in the back. And then Ron Lesher, he's also quite an author. If you like revenue, you should be a Ron Lesher groupie. He has articles in all the magazines pretty continually. Plus, he's a good speaker and some great examples, and gave a really wonderful presentation on Prohibition and the stamps and related stories and ephemera that went with it. But why do we collect revenues? These are some of the main principles in all kinds of our collecting pursuits, but you can start by putting stamps in albums. And when I was 12, my biggest present that year, I think for Christmas, was a 1960 Scott's National Album, and 72 pages were of revenues. And when I look back at that now, it doesn't even have about a third or quarter of them aren't even in there. They didn't have room for those. I mean, there's so many of these, and the prices are good, but getting an album or your revenues putting in stock books, it's a good way to start to learn. What I'll show you today will perhaps help you to organize a little bit better. And if we have anybody with inquiring minds, it's a good way to gain knowledge from the Scott's catalog and all the other ones, worldwide, specialized, they're all there. And that's how you learn. As I said, you learn by doing. You collect, you write about it, you share it with the club. Even if you write a little small article for the club newsletter, it's a good place to start. Or your show and tell at your club meetings. Throw up a couple revenues and ask questions. It's fun when you can throw up something to the club and say, what is it? And nobody has a clue. And you got something good. But with revenues, you can identify varieties, perfings, printings, inks, papers, experimental papers, different printing companies, other characteristics. We tease Charlie because he's starting to plate some proprietary die stamps. And then this last time he got into a new find, he just found on a proprietary die stamp some experimental paper which had little silk threads in them. They're so small that you couldn't even find them with a 30 power loop. So I think this might be in his presentation in a couple of weeks of his, and you can ask him about it, unless he's changed his PowerPoint. But there's errors, freaks, and oddities, especially the Civil War inverts in the second and third series. I'll show you where they are, though I don't have any. But revenue stamp collecting is really a way of following fiscal history of your country and illustrating it. I would think if I was, say I was a CPA presenting at the local or state association or something, I would love to illustrate some of the stories with these Civil War stamps and other stamps, because I think it'd be so interesting for the people. It's fun to find documents with both federal and state revenue stamps on them or more. I have a lot of documents that I got. These are $2 and $3, and I just get, somebody could see a pile of number ones, and that's okay with me. But if I see a pile of some old Christmas seals or some really old documents with auxiliary markings and stamps, that's what makes me a happy camper. And so this is what I'm starting to get into and to enjoy it. But finding 2 different state revenues on a document, a challenge. Matching proprietary revenue with its container or box. And so they have the old bottle of pills back then, or the elixir that you drink, and you have the proprietary stamp on it of their own company. And finding that today is pretty good. Charlie will have a few of those to show you when the time comes. And there's some really odd revenues, and I have one here. I just pulled these out the other day. This is from Ron Lesher from his article in the March American Philatelist. Can you see my cursor? Okay. These all had to do with liquor. And when the government went in to check, they would put their seals on there. And these are paper seals, and there'd be a place for the key to go through. But when the key came out, it would break the seal so they could tell. But what it was is basically the distiller who's making the alcohol below a certain percentage, or alcohol allowed for certain types of, medication, medical brandy or sacramental wines. They didn't trust the G-men. The G-men didn't trust them. So they had these are the locks and the keys and a couple different ones. This is also revenue related materials, because these were the dippers that you'd put in. I think we even used these in chemistry back in the old days. When the periodic chart had about 50 elements on it. But these were to be used to tell you what percent of alcohol was in there. And they had to be checked out and calibrated and everything like that. But these are all revenue related, and they might not be revenue stamps, but they're revenue paper, and important and interesting. More of something for everyone, seeking the earliest known uses. These are out there, like we do with a lot of the others. And this is a fun one, matching the purpose with the correct document. As we see when we get into the Civil War stamps, there's, I think, 28 different kinds. You had them for a mortgage, you had them for a stock transfer, you had them for bonds. There's a bunch, I don't even know what they are, so maybe you can tell me tonight. But when they're out there, for the first period, they had to be used on those documents. It didn't work very well. So they then went, you could use anything on anything, and it was fine. So finding a good match is a challenge, and many people like to collect those. If you're a topical collector, even if you're not into revenues are cheap enough. Get a couple, for your wine on stamps exhibit or your wine on stamps presentation. Found a website, though I lost where it was, but they listed at least, I think, 305 revenue tax topics that are actually on the stamps itself. So whatever you collect topically, there's a revenue to go with it. And I think it'd be worth looking at, especially to me, if you could find it on a document with some auxiliary markings. I'll show you a few of the cancels. Many were manuscript, but others were very attractive looking, and people collect these. There's a writer, American stamp dealer and collector. The name leaves me right now, but his last 2 issues, he showed Union revenue stamps on Confederate documents. Very interesting. One was a sale of slaves. Just, where do they get this stuff? It's amazing. And it is, you think about it, it's an American history. This is the story. You can tell them with all these. I could write a history of economic United States and illustrate them. And just for the research, every revenue has a set topic series for the story, learn it and go with it. I took a continuing education course from Janet Travell, MD, on myofascial pain back in the early 90s. She was the one who was a physician to John Kennedy, diagnosed as Addison's disease, grew up in China as a missionary kid, so she learned all the acupuncture points, but she's the modern one for our acupuncture or acupressure points and trigger points. So you have people going like this into somebody's neck and all that, and they're going, ah, what a good pain. That's her. But in her 80s, she wrote a double volume, at least 1,600 pages illustrated on research. The first 160 pages was just introduction. And she was a real inspiration. And that's, she's the one that said, when I learn a new topic, I write about it or teach it. And I think getting into the research will get you excited and wanting you to share. But there's essays, specimens, and others. Dated reds, I'll show you some of these. These came out from 40 to 58, and they had, they're the same stamps, but each year had an overprint of the year. So it's fun to find a different stamp at a different date on them. Many of the U.S. documents contain foreign revenues. I have a few to show you. And it's neat, and Charlie will get into it, identifying some businesses that are extant today that were depicted on some of these private dies and cancels. I have my great-grandfather, great-great-grandfather, there was a liquor business in New York. I don't know if it was importing or exporting. But I have a documentary stamp with their company logo on it, which is really neat. I have one that's handwritten, but I don't know if it's theirs or not. How many AHOs there are, I don't know. But it's one of the things I keep looking for, but it's around somewhere, but who knows. But getting into it, there's basics, your Scott's catalog, many, many pages of these, especially some of the best illustrations of the early imprinted stamps, like the Stamp Act that started what helped pave the way for the Revolutionary War. But a good resource is 2007. Now that I'm getting into revenues, I think I need a new one to get me updated. And then Rodney Jewell's book, Lynn and Stephen Rod, two great chapters on collecting revenues and good questions and answers. If you have this book, first or second edition, well worth checking out. Good references. At the end, I'll have some websites for you also as places to start. But on the U.S. revenues, before we started taxes, income taxes like we have now was based on commerce, import, export, documents, and goods, the middleman. And then I'll go through this kind of quickly, but there's just a lot of supervisor seals. These were the imprinted stamps, the embossed, starting in as early as 1791. The whiskey area and the Whiskey Rebellion. You know why they call them syntaxes when they go with the whiskey first. They didn't have motorboats then, but if they did, I'm sure there would have been a seal for that as well. And these went up through 1817. The seals, the stamps that we know now, the adhesive seals, really came in 1862 with the what they call the Revenue Act, which was to finance the Civil War. And we'll spend some time on these. 3 different series, and they should be enough to whet the appetite of any collector. This is the first series from October 62 when they first started. The 102, the 102nd was, I think, issued by March of 63. So they didn't come out all on the same day, but they were in use for 9 years. They're all monochrome and they different colors. And as the denomination went up, so did the size of the stamp. They were issued perforated, part perforated, and imperfect. So in your Scott's stamp album, you'll see 3 different parts where they're divided up. There's 28 categories. We're going to look at those. As I said, the revenue had to match the specific document. So if you had a bank check, you had to have a stamp that said bank check on it. You can see here that this is for a certificate, you need that stamp. Playing cards, you needed this stamp. More expensive playing cards, you needed that stamp. Next thing, they're all monochromatic, one. Hearing some feedback. Okay, please. Yeah, okay, thank you. I just heard garbling. Was there a question maybe? Oh, okay. Well, go ahead. I can't hear.
No, I think it was just feedback.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Like I said, if question, just make sure I see your hand. If I get, the latter 2, 101, 102, had different different colors and stuff. They're canceled by device or manuscript. These are almost all manuscript because they're early. Later issues, I'll show you some of the different cancellations. But these were the different categories. You can see there's 28 of them for the first 102 stamps. And this was the area where they came out. So the first R1 was Express. The second one, R2, was a playing card, et cetera, and then they would grow in both number and in size. Many of them make sense. Protest, there's some revenue guys. Anybody know what protest is? Yeah, I want to look these things up. There's a couple others. Original process, I'm not sure. An agreement, I think that's a contract. Just a variety of issues there. Power of attorney, et cetera. So you can see 28 different categories. The last category was charter party, and that was issue number 85. Here's some of the machine cancels. Again, very nice. The name of the company and the date. And these were canceled by the holder, the original holder of the document or product. Here's a couple of manuscript cancels as well. Very attractive and very collectible.
Excuse me, Paul.
Yeah.
Paul, something's going on with your audio.
Is it me?
There's a lot of echo going on.
Okay.
You have like two mics, possibly.
Let me see. Maybe I can lower it a little bit.
Make sure that everybody else is muted.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Can you
Yes,
hear me?
it is.
Okay. I just lowered, my audio, but
Okay.
if you're still getting it, let me know. We'll keep trying because
A little bit.
go well.
You can still hear a little bit of feedback, but it seems like
That helped.
it helped.
Okay. Then yeah. So if you want to contact me, wave hand or something because mine is so low I can't hear you. But if it keeps the feedback down. Okay, so I mentioned on that first series, 102 stamps, 28 different tax purposes, and they're all beginning with an R designator. The later proprietaries would have an RB designator, and in fall of '62. But what they realized is that 28 different stamps was way too much, and in less than 2.5 months, they scrubbed that system. So you could put a bank check stamp on a mortgage. You could mortgage stamp on a protest, whatever that was. So in other words, they made them interchangeable. And that started December of 1862, when you could use one and substitute for the other. They also found out that a lot of these stamps were counterfeited, and the cancels were washed away and they were reused. I mean, we've heard that story before. So for security reasons, they scrubbed that system in 1871, and they came out with the second series. And here's the second series. There's only 30 of these stamps, and it only lasted a year or less than a year. There are two colors, blue with black, and they were answered because of the legal use. They're all perforated, so there's none of these part perforations. Some use fugitive inks, but the problem was they're too uniform in appearance. They all look blue. They all had a gray vignette in the middle, and so they didn't last long, less than a year. And 10 issues were known with inverted vignettes. So in my album page, there's a strip of 10 going right down the middle, again from the 16 national album, where they had room for those stamps. The thing with that album is they also had a whole page for C3A, the inverted Jenny. I guess people had it, and you saw that it had places for or you'll see it has places for the Persian rugs. So I'll show you the page in my album for the Persian rugs right there. Okay, that's it. You can see the size as compared to a page. The R132 was the $200 one, and they 446 were printed. There's now 125 that they know of in the census, and the Scott value 2007 was $6,500. The large one that everybody knows, that's real estate of up to $500,000. and only 210 were printed, 80 known, so they're rare. How many people have them? No, I wish you did. And that value is 13 grand. They're also planning a $10,000 revenue stamp, but it was not issued. And these are what they look like. This is from the website of the National Postal Museum at the Smithsonian. And it is an essay. And here is the $200 one. Look a little closer. Now, these sizes aren't proportional, but this website that I found, I put them up compared with Persian rugs. And you can see where they call them that. And these stamps, they were sheets of one. I'd love to have one of these. I think that's really neat. One per sheet. And I'll have to ask Charlie, I don't know if that's just old and scratches or those different kind of silk threads making a, quote, special paper. But yeah, we had a congressman in our club. We still do in our club, but he doesn't live near us, but he doesn't come that often. But he gets to our shows and he supports us with his dues and things. And he was in the Congressional Stamp Caucus. When he spoke to us, he said it's the only nonpartisan caucus in Congress, but it had congressmen and senators. And when we made our pilgrimage to the National Postal Museum, he made some calls ahead. He was going to meet us, but business came up. But we got into the vault, and they said, let them know what you want in advance, and they'll have it ready for you. And so we got to see some of these things. So that second series went out pretty quick because nobody could use them. They all looked alike. Similar, I guess, to the problem with the what are those? The names, they're all the red ones. I want to say the express stamps, but they had the dollar value with fruit pickers. What is that? Brain's a tough thing to lose. But you were not allowed to use anything for the parcel stamps. You weren't used to use any other stamps but those, and then you couldn't use those on any other mail. And because it was so confusing, they just said you can use anything on anything. And that what they found was that second series was just too confusing and people weren't using them. Now here's the third series, again, only a smaller number here, but 5 different colors. They all have black vignettes, all perforated, and 7 were known with inverted vignettes. These didn't die out as a series. The series was successful, but the taxes were repealed in 1872, all but the 2-cent tax on bank checks. So after 1872, they came out with new bank check stamps. Those are these guys, and these were used through June of '88. So any stamp, any bank check you wrote had to have one of these or stamp paper, which I will show you. So between the Civil War and World War I, they got caught short again with the Spanish-American War. And how are we going to pay for this? Well, we'll get some more documentary stamps. This is what they did. The Senate held debating tool and held it up for a couple months. And so the Bureau of Engraving Printing had to take existing stamps and overprint them with Internal Revenue so they could use these until the battleships came out. And so with this reinstitution of the documentary stamps, it takes us right up to World War I. And again, the noted battleship issues, and these are either rouletted or rouletted perforation or hyphen perforation. The latter is just a little, not just a slip, but just a tiny little bit taken out. And you can see here examples of the overprints used in a bank check, October of '98. And then here's the documentary stamp. Again, these don't say bank check on them. They don't say mortgage. It just says documentary stamp. So largely paper transactions. And you can see the name H.E. Davis, and it's H.E.D., and the letters are very similar to the signature. this might be the person whose checking account it is, or at the time, and somebody can help me if you know, bank presidents would pay their bills using a bank check, and that might be the president of the bank as well, or the board president or something like that. But you can see the date, 5 May 5th, 1899. Express companies. If there's an area you want to have fun learning about, read about the beginning of the express companies when they had to start transmitting mail from California with the gold rush and the Civil War and all that, and then the stamps go with it. But just a very, again, interesting history of economic United States. And there's a documentary battleship paying the bills. And you can see for the document itself, it had a little square for the stamp reminding you that you needed to put it on. Revenue stamp paper. Now, while the other stamps were, the revenue stamps were designated with an R, the proprietary is an RB, revenue stamp paper was an RN, where the imprint was put right on the check. And these came out with the Civil War Act, but they didn't start until July after the war was over. And these went on to the 80s. Directly onto the check. These are all in Scots. And the way it goes is you have the RN, and then you have a dash A to X. And the A is the design. So there's A to X number of designs. That'd be X, Y, Z, 24, 22 different designs. And then you get the numbers, RN, A, and 1 to 6. So I think, let's just go. Looks like RN D1. This is design D, and orange is, I think, color number 1. I think this is RN B6, and 6 is the green color. But they're quite attractive if you like bank checks and all these kind of documents. Between the wars, then, after the Spanish-American War, things kind of died down a little bit. And then needed government expansion. I'm going to have to look up what that is all about. But a series of new stamps came out from 1914 to 1916. Whether it was in preparation for the war, I don't know. I think Internal Revenue Service was in place, but individual income tax wasn't, I don't think, until Wilsonian era. World War I era. So this is probably, I'm guessing, in preparation for the taxes. Question? Let me make it loud.
Oh, I'm fine. I just
Okay.
had a question. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah.
Just pardon my ignorance, but several times you have used the word proprietary.
Yes.
Precisely when it comes to revenue stamps, precisely what is a proprietary revenue?
Most of revenue stamps you've seen so far and will be seeing. I'll lower it again then. You can hear me still. Okay.
Yeah.
Most of these have been for documents, you know, that list of 20 things. But there's that little category within, and then it's outside the RB stamps. And these are for products.
Okay.
So playing cards, patent medicines, anything that was on the hit list. I'll show you that list later. But those are for goods. And when you next time when Dr. DeComo speaks, he'll be talking about proprietary stamps in general. So that's the thing, you know, you have documents and goods, and that's the difference. Okay.
Thank you.
So these are the quote that stands for government expansion. I can see there's a good number, about 32 of them. And they also have a set of proprietary stamps. Remember that RB designation. And these are the battleships. And if we go back, you can look, they look very much alike, but they're different because these say on the bottom proprietary. So these are for the goods. These will be for the documents. And when you look close, many of these have denominations which are fractional. I didn't even realize there's a difference until I started putting this together earlier in the year. So they look very much alike, but these are proprietary stamps. Okay.
Excuse me a minute.
Great War, 1917, the
I
World
think
War
if
I
you
Revenue
can,
Act. And you can see we go from, we're now up to R228 to R286. Remember, we started with the Civil War with R1. Well, here we are again with these, there'll be now documentary and proprietary stamps. These started in 1917, they went through 1940. Three basic designs. The high value ones, and these go from $30 to $1,000. These are the founding fathers. The low value ones, that's these guys. And there's the middle value ones, and these are like $1 to $10. Very attractive stamps with Liberty on them. These are kind of called the dreaded reds.
excuse me a minute. I think Lyndon Bill's mic isn't muted, and I think that's where the feedback's coming from. If we can mute that.
Somebody has one not muted?
Down, Lyndon Bill.
Okay,
There it is.
good. All right, maybe that's it. Yeah, sometimes that's all it takes. Okay. Okay, so the Great War is starting, and that those lasted through the 40s. And then 1940, a new series. And what happened in 1940? We're starting to realize, those black clouds are starting to form over Europe and over in the Orient, and more income is needed. We have income tax then, but here we are again for the document stamps. And these all look alike. Every page from 48 up to 40 to 58 all look alike. The only difference is this series of 1948, as it says on this page right in here. These are the differences. It's just one page per year. And one of the collecting areas is to try to find a different year. So this was canceled in 49, and yet it was a series 48 stamp. And so I want to see if that's a kosher one, if that's snuck through, or if there's a kind of a grandmother clause where you can use anyone at the time after, again, an area where needed. If any of you know that answer, I'd love to hear that. Okay, here we have not quite revenue stamped paper, but this is a stock transfer or stock confirmation sheet, which they had up till probably the maybe mid to late 90s. Flimsy, but I caught it on the back and looking at it. What is this? And it looks like it was put on with a meter, but it says, United States Internal Revenue documentary, $1.04 on the $2,587.50 transactions. I've only seen this one. Everything else looks the same as far as a confirmation sheet. Other federals that are issued are listed in Scott's. We mentioned proprietary, the battleships. So always look at your battleship and make sure whether it says proprietary or if it says documentary. Future delivery, stock transfers, again, wine cordials. You can see why they call these kind of the sin taxes. You got the rich people who are transferring money, the drinkers of beer, the fermented people, the gamblers, the speculators, the smokers, the narcotics people. I mean, here we go. And then the consular service and customs fees, maybe they're all crooked, I don't know, but a lot of these had revenue stamps. What's interesting is that the potato stamp didn't last long, and it went out in 35 from the SCOTUS, Supreme Court of the United States, the group that also took out Roosevelt's National Recovery Administration. But I can't find that I have it. How things, use, for propaganda, it has two of these stamps in a little glassine, and around it says, this is a story of Roosevelt's illegal potato tax stamp or something, that they probably passed around back then. A neat item. I want to look for it. But also this tobacco, this was canceled by SCOTUS too. You wonder, were they all smokers? I don't know. Narcotics, I have a couple of those to show you. Marijuana stamps and consular fees. I read an article about customs and some of the custom stamps, and wrote a letter to the writer. Said, hey, would you like to talk to our club about custom fees? Because I thought it'd be interesting. Never did hear from him, but I have a friend who's one of his closest friends growing up, and I guess they're still alive, was a customs official. And my friend would just entertain me with the stories about the customs office and stuff that went on. It was not criminal acts, this stuff you can't make it up. And it was just a lot of fun. I thought we could hear about it. But oops. But even though the stamps went away, many of the taxes remain, and they're still there. As I said, there always were going to be taxes, and there always will be long after the stamps are gone. And like Ben Franklin's remark, the only thing we can be sure of is death and taxes. Now, here we go with the private dies, and this is Charlie's presentation to you guys next week. And as the question came up, what are proprietary stamps versus documentaries? And these are goods, hard goods. And this came about because companies went to the government and said, hey, can we make our own? And the government says, sure, if you pay for them and if we approve them. And that's exactly what they did. So they made up their own revenue stamps for their products. There's about 450 of them, but there's 100 different 80 stamps for matches. The lion's share, 315 for medicine. That's why they call them the match and medicine stamps. We're also back to the book stamps. So I know when I talked the first time, somebody said in the club, I didn't even know that stuff was in there. And they pulled their Scots out while I'm talking. And there it was. I think we don't give it enough attention as we'd like to. But with these private dies, they didn't have to look like a revenue stamp. They had to say, United States Internal Revenue on them. They had to have the denomination, but that was really it, unless there's something heretical in it. And so they used them, they could advertise on them. As I said, they got them faster and quicker. And these are all listed in Scott's. Charlie's going to talk about the patent medicine ones when you talk to him next week. This is one of these proprietary stamps that came out, the RS 315 patent medicine. No, take it back. I don't have that number here, but this was used with the Celebrate the Century series. The stamp was used on that stamp because it was these kind of medicines that brought about the Pure Food and Drug Act, because they're selling stuff and it was all sugar to give you a rush or alcohol to ease the pain and not much else in between. It wasn't like database research at the time. They didn't really have that, but it's kind of neat to see that it survived that one.
Paul, I have a question.
Private dies, as I mentioned, they were included in the 1862 series. That's when they first came out. Many of them were by printed by Scott and Carpenter in Philadelphia. And in the original series, there were 8 generalized proprietary stamps. They just said proprietary on them, which meant they were used for goods. No pictures other than, the president on it. And when you see these, they look like all the other documentary stamps, and they were used for the manufactured products. And then, as I mentioned, stamp companies are the companies that produced the matches, the canned fruit, the playing cards, the medicines. They could design their own, as long as it said U.S. Internal Revenue. What's interesting about these, and I don't have one to show you, I'm not sure if Charlie does either, but when the taxes were discontinued, many of them continued to have the stamps printed again, but they revised them. They took out United States Internal Revenue and they took out the denomination. They might leave a 3 on there for something else, but what it was is, well, let's see, we'll go to it. What it was with these stamps, and these are all proprietaries, but they take the number out and or at least put something, number, they put #1 bestseller or something like that, and take out their internal revenue. But they left it on because it kind of gave a legitimacy, like it was government approved. And again, it had the advertising as well. And again, it's a very nice collecting area. These are just ones I threw together on a page when I didn't know better. When I was a kid, my dad smoked, and we tried to save these off the cigarette packs. You might remember that. not that you smoke, but the playing cards and things. The narcotic stamps are here. You can see these are long. These would go over the neck of the bottle. So like a whiskey bottle, when you opened it, it would crack that. So when you find them, they're hard to get in intact positions. In addition to smoking, my dad liked to drink whiskey, and we would always try to see if we could get off one of those big pink, bonded stamps that would come up. Never got one off. So when you see those, you know they had to work pretty hard to get them.
Paul,
You can see this one up here. It's a little bit shredded looking. Of what
Can
they
I
had to
ask
do
a
to get it,
question?
And Charlie will show you a variety of these. We're mentioning trying to find companies that are still around. This is Johnson & Johnson's. And obviously they're still around. Or if we think about Johnson & Johnson every day and hear it on the news with the vaccines. Here's some of what the proprietaries look like up close. Internal Revenue, 1 cent denomination. And then, an official looking guy, Dr. So-and-so's elixir, Holloway's elixir. Anybody remember Fletcher's Castoria when you were a kid? You know, your mother knew, so you didn't know why, but you had to take it. Castor oil. Telegraph stamps, these are designated by a T, and 16 different companies participated in it, and it paid their telegrams. And so the way they were done is, this is the T, but one was the name of the company, and this was the name. So one was the American Rapid Telegraph Company, and they had 6 stamps, even though there's more of them here. There's different functions. Number 4 was the Baltimore and Ohio Connecticut River Company. And what I found about these are a lot more complicated than they look. About 20 years ago, I brought in a speaker. I even helped him make his slides, who was an expert in these areas, and he lives in the area. I just sent out an email the other day, see if we can get him back to talk about him. Because again, I think it's just a very fascinating area, telegraph stamps. Now, this is just an overview of the federal, just a little bit of lip service on state and locals. From that encyclopedia of U.S. Philately, it says state revenues are for collectors with perseverance, ones who are not afraid of the unknown. In other words, you put them to collect them all, it's impossible, but they're interesting and attractive, and the field is endless. But they go back to Massachusetts. Local jurisdiction played them, for taxes, for fees, for control, for accounting purposes. California had the first state revenue that came out. Louisiana used them for lottery tickets. The functions varied: fees, hunting services, for gas inspections, this a variety of things, whatever the local was, could be the city, the state. No albums for these. You can design your own. And I think plug for ATA they have, if you're interested, they're going to have a course on making your own album pages to custom for what you have with your stamp collection. So if you check the ATA website, you can sign up for those. Only a few of these are listed in Scots. I did find the Scots, some of the state duck stamps are in there. But again, it's a wide open area. It makes the others look easy. Some examples of state revenues: Ohio prepaids, documentary stamps from Florida, the DC beverage tax for quarter gallon, New York State transfer, stock transfer, Maryland wine excise, Philadelphia documentary, and a tax transfer. And I have documents with some of the Pennsylvania ones on them. They really look sharp, almost as good as a nice wax seal, even and with a ribbon. Some foreigns, just touching bases. I saw this one in an article, and it's Canada for a light inspector, but I really like the lady with the electric hair, Queen Victoria. Had to get one. A lot of the tobacco stamps from foreign countries. I think it's Italy tobacco, but here's some Mexico and Colombia. Some French, I don't know yet. There's a guy and I working on these. Do a little more research in Argentina, Greece, Romania. The field is endless on foreign revenues. These are some old ones. I think I got these for quarter to 50 cents a piece. And comes to our club shows, always selling them. Not very expensive. Still working on this one. Not sure that looks like the one of the British Royal Crests. Not sure, but I don't. More of a seal than it would be a tax. I'm not sure, but I threw it in. Russia, Austria, Italy, Again, attractive, pretty stamps. Not sure what they do. Austria again, 1898, 1888. Some foreign revenue examples. Britain, it says for payment of to send mail and for taxes. And they could use them for either. Again, if you love exterior markings, there they are. That's the King George V definitive. There's during the war, Pennsylvania Railroad Company had an office in London, and they pay the check fee there, and there it is imposed on the stamp, and then their own fee on the back. So this is kind of a U.S. document in Great Britain with two foreign different stamps. An imprint, you can see this here, and this itself, and again, plenty of auxiliary markings. Seems like a lot of work for $4.50. Foreign revenues on U.S. companies, the second one, the Hong Kong stamp. And this is the American presidential line, Bill of Lading, 1940. So this is actually two stamps. This is a revenue stamp. Sometimes you see these by themselves. And this is 2/2/40. So this would be 2 February 1940, the date of the stamp. It wasn't a cancel stamp. It was actually itself. And they had both of them on. I don't know enough about how these work, why these would both be there, but it's a nice document. And the last slide I have is there's American Revenue Association, which is worth looking at too. I'm assuming a few of you are in there. I'm not in it now, but a great journal that I've seen that they put out, and they have handbooks, references, catalogs, articles, tech papers, PDFs that you can get. Better, you get to see more, obviously, if you're a member and put in your number. A lot of good links, and they have auctions, which have been canceled until the end of the COVID. The state revenuer, and here is the website for that. Again, much of the same as above. And then there are actually individual state societies, catalogs, and websites as well. Revenue Society, this is the British one from 1990, Robson Lowe, we've heard the name, and it is actually worldwide. And I've heard, when I was speaking last time, we had a visitor to our club who was a member of this and explained how good a group it is, and a lot of benefits for non-members, and their website is right here. As I mentioned, Scott's, if you're new at it, go to Scott's. They'll take you to just what you need for now, and then the Encyclopedia of U.S. Stamps. Whoops. I need to go back in, but there it is. Thank you for that. And our stamp website is there, lcpsstamps.org. Almost all of our presentations, the PowerPoints, are listed on the website. And of our virtual meetings, we are taping them, and with the speaker's permission, you can get kind of a copy of the live presentation, so you'll see the PowerPoint and the presenter all at the same time. And if you have any questions for me or want to get in touch, right here it is. And if you forget that, Rick always knows how to get me. He's a member of our club and has all my contact information. So good. Questions, anybody?
I think Bendo has a question.
Okay.
I was wondering whether what time period the proprietary die-cast stamps were. I saw one date on it, like 1906, but was there a specific era that?
Proprietaries, they came and went, but the first series that started the Civil War, and I don't have my catalog. If anybody has a specialized, if you can pull it down, that will tell you. Started right away with the first series. They're kind of a parallel set of stamps, but they have the RB designation. And they went into the 1880s, 1890s. And some of the ones you see, they look like proprietaries, but they're just used as an advertisement seal to make it look like it's a proprietary stamp. I think that answers. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Okay.
Paul,
Yes.
question. Did the Treasury Department have any kind of regulations regarding the cancellation of these revenue stamps?
Well, knowing their government, they probably did. I think it'd be interesting to see the specs, the government documents. But what I can tell you is that it just had to say U.S. internal. It had to have the name of the company. It had to have the company or an agent, initials if it was a handwritten, and then the date. So the things that those are the ones that were there. They don't want to make it too overwhelming because for a lot of these companies, they're doing these all day long. They're doing their business, and then all of a sudden you say, now you got to put on stamps. Oh, now you have to cancel them. And they want to keep it as simple as possible, but they don't want to stop the coffers from coming. So
Thank you.
that's my best guesstimate.
Okay.
Paul,
Yeah, Rick.
you might want to take a look at this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know if we can get on the screen. I'm not
Yeah,
up there.
let me take mine down. Okay.
All right.
Oh
see this?
yeah.
Okay,
Uh-huh.
there's your red label up your revenue. It's pretty well ruined.
Yep.
But look right here on the, if I can get it right there, that Ohio
Okay.
revenue. Do you see that?
Yep. So that has one of each on it.
Yeah.
State and,
Now, that's a
Is
real
there-
common.
do you know what period that is from? Was that from Prohibition?
I
or
don't know. It's got to be, 100 years old probably.
Okay, it could be that because states varied. Ron Lesher one of the neat documents is, if you've ever seen them, the medicinal scripts that doctors would write for patients. Please, 1 pint of whatever. But they had one for whiskey, for gin, for sherry. There's one for French brandy. These are federal, but then some states also had requirements as well. What's that? Red
It's
Heart
Jamaica rum,
Uh-huh.
and it was imported by the Henry White Company, from Henry White Company of London to National Distillers in New York.
Henry White was in London.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I would imagine when we cleaned out my parents' house, I found this. I would imagine this might have been from the 40s or 50s.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay.
But it's quite
Yeah.
a lot of.
It's amazing with these. When we're doing the revenues, one of our visitors from California who comes somewhat regularly held up a bottle she had with it was a Canadian bottle with a stamp on it. And she held it close enough which we could read. And when you see Charlie, I think if you ask him, because he's just amazing. He just reaches behind, he like pulling a rabbit's out of a hat, and he'll show you some of the boxes of the pills and things with the documents on it. But yeah, those bottles are neat, and they're really hard to get off. Yeah, Rick.
Yeah, I had a comment and then a question. I think my grandfather and great-grandfather were in real estate, so I have a whole lot of their deeds and checks and things. And what I recall is...
Was this New York?
This is New York.
Yeah, okay.
Western New York. And what I believe, but I think some of them were the federal revenue stamps for taxes, and they had to put their initials on them. And there were others that I remember soaking some of them as a kid, and that they were like sliced, had 2 or 3 slices in them. John had brought up the issue of cancellations, and I think there was a method of slicing that was also a common thing.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, because I didn't mention, I think I'm not going to quote, but I think a couple of the early revenues had holes punched into them with a puncher.
Right.
Yeah,
Sure.
because counterfeiting was a big thing. Look at the documents. The more than 100-year-old document to counterfeit his death. On that early American currency from a revolutionary era to counterfeit his death. So yeah, I don't think they're going to execute people anymore from it. They just want to make sure that they couldn't do it and reuse it.
Okay, my question was about, do you have a comment or awareness of whether some revenue stamps are actually easier or cheaper to find mint than used?
Like everything else, and I was going to mention it didn't, but I will. They're all based, one is condition, one is based on rarity. So covers and revenues from the cities, in a document are more common than they would be from small villages.
Ah,
So if they're going for rarity, the smaller villages do it. And it's like, some can't, I was just looking, I got a lot in it. It was South Africa number 4A. It was a Tatbesh set. And they're valued higher if they were on cover, because I guess they're unusual and people would probably not want to use them. So they kept them off cover. So probably, it's availability. Like a lot of your Danzig stamps are a lot more valuable if they're canceled. If it's a real cancel, if they're especially on cover. So did it answer your question on the revenues?
yeah. I just wondered in general. Oh, and the last thing, that fella's check, H.E. Davis,
Davis.
he had a 2-cent stamp on there. What would he have had to pay 2 cents for?
Because he wrote it. That's a fee for writing a check.
Really? Every check?
That's one of the first things they hit, because you write checks, you have money, we're going to get a piece of it. So every check, the check is a document.
Yeah.
Every mortgage at your company had to have a mortgage stamp. And then after Christmas of 1862, you could put a check stamp on a mortgage. It didn't matter. But yeah, that's what that fee was for. And if you remember those pictures of the checks with the big orange designs in the middle, those were the same thing as the 2-cent stamp imprinted on the check. It was just easier to get your checks printed that way, and you didn't have to, go through and endorse them, because when the check was cleared, that took care of it, and it was assumed. You couldn't take it off and reuse it, or you could maybe soak the stamp off. If it was water soluble ink, you could wipe it off and reuse it. Mhm.
Gotcha. Thank you. Thanks,
Yes,
Paul.
Steve. Sure.
Yeah, so a comment first. I mean, I didn't hear you mention the barefoot catalogs. I've got a lot of Polish revenues, and I use a barefoot catalog. Have you ever seen that before? So, but my question is really about the playing card stamp you're showing. Are there any instances out there where you can actually find the stamp still attached to a deck of cards? Is that, have you seen that?
I don't have one. Ask Charlie next time.
Okay.
He might have one. I mean, he's going to go through so much stuff, your head's going to spin, and you're going to be interested in everything that's on the screen. He might have one, but yeah, they do exist if the cards just haven't been opened. You throw into Grandpa's foot locker, when he's sick and he doesn't recover, and it just stays there, and 100 years later they open it and there it is. Yep. Because you saw plenty of the ones that I had were still intact.
That'd be really neat.
Yeah, they were not put on with the same kind of glue as the whiskey bottle ones. That was like a horse glue. You could see the glue coming out from the sides and on the bottom, and it beaded. I mean, that stuff was thick. I mean, we tried soaking it for a weekend. We tried getting into there with a razor knife to get it on. No. So how people got them off, I don't know. There must be a way. Maybe they use some kind of chemical agent or solvent to break it up. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Paul,
Good question. Yeah.
if you don't mind, I've got another question for you.
Uh-huh.
I know in some foreign countries, the British Commonwealth, for example, really high values of many British stamps. Scott mentions that if their revenue canceled, then they are normally worth much less than a postal cancel.
Okay.
Did the United States have ever use stamps for revenue documents with a revenue cancel like some of the foreign countries did?
I've seen a few. They were kind of used in a pinch.
Yeah.
Like they would use a regular stamp when they didn't have a postage due. Those kinds of incidents. I've seen them. Value-wise, I don't know. But I don't think I can call it up without losing this. But I got an email from Larry Rosenblum today. And he was on one of the British exhibit that they had, an online exhibit. He got some images of some of these British revenues. Wonderful looking things, not as common and quite pricey. Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, sure. Anything else? Okay, well, thank you very much. I've enjoyed coming here and being part of your group, and
Thank
I'll look forward
you
to
much, Paul.
Rick. Yes. Mhm.
We really appreciate it.
Good. My
Yeah,
pleasure.
thank
My
you.
pleasure. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thank you. Paul. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and I'm willing to come back if you're interested, and would love to have some of you guys. I'm sure my club would like to hear FDR from somebody other than me. It's been a while, and he's due. So good. And Rick, we'll see you online sometime soon.
Thank you, and please give
Okay.
our best to
Thank you.
your
I'll
club.
just check out, and we'll be good. Thanks, guys.
Take
Thank
care,
you so
Paul.
much.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.